Recently, I celebrated my 16th birthday, which was made memorable by a generous gift from my grandmother. She transferred the ownership of her penthouse apartment to me. This upscale apartment is located in the city centre, a place my grandmother occasionally visits, although she primarily resides in the suburbs. The gift came as a bright spot in what has been a challenging year and a half. To give some context, my life took a sudden downturn when my father, who had always been more dedicated to his work than to our family, left us. The departure was abrupt. He moved out and informed me of it via a text message, simply advising me to be good. This news came after he and my mother had already filed for divorce, a fact they only disclosed around the time he left. Their marriage ended because my father felt overwhelmed by circumstances that he never fully explained to me. This left my brother and me in the sole custody of our mother after a swift legal separation, facilitated by our state's laws. As I was still grappling with these changes, my mother introduced more upheaval into our lives. She revealed that she had been dating a man named William for a few months, and they had quickly decided to get engaged. The news of her engagement was a lot to process, compounded by the fact that William would soon become my stepfather. My initial interactions with William were uncomfortable. He seemed distant and uninterested in connecting with me, unlike his playful demeanour with my much younger brother. The situation grew more complicated when my mother announced that William had accepted a promising job offer out of state. They planned to move and wanted to take my brother with them, leaving me to live with my grandmother. Despite my willingness to relocate with them to maintain our family unit, my mother opposed the idea. She explained that it was better for me to stay due to my established life here with school and friends. However, the real reason emerged later. William felt that because of our limited bond and my reservations about their swift engagement, I wouldn't fit well into his vision of family life. This revelation was hurtful, especially coming from my mother, whom I believed would always support me. In the end, I remained in the penthouse, a sanctuary given by my grandmother and a place of my own amidst the family turmoil. This experience has been a mix of deep hurt from feeling abandoned by my mother, yet also gratitude towards my grandmother for providing me with stability and unwavering support during these turbulent times. After a heart-to-heart conversation with my mother about her plans to move away with her new fiancé William, I decided I couldn't wait around for their departure. I chose to move in with my grandmother immediately, although physically relocating took a few days to organise. My mother attempted to reassure me of her love, explaining that her decisions were also an attempt at finding personal happiness. However, the tension between us grew, and during my last days at home, we barely spoke. When it was time to leave, I didn't say goodbye to her. It felt unnecessary and too painful, given the circumstances. The only farewell I found worth the emotional effort was to my little brother, who I knew I would miss dearly. Living with my grandmother has brought much needed stability and compassion into my life. She is my maternal grandmother, and, unlike my paternal grandparents, with whom we've had minimal contact, she has always been a nurturing presence. My life with her has been filled with care and support, contrasting starkly with the emotional turmoil caused by recent family events. School commutes are a bit longer, but that's a small price to pay for the peace and love I now experience. Despite the distance from my mother, I maintain contact to talk to my little brother, avoiding direct conversations with her. This arrangement continued until my recent birthday, which my grandmother turned into a special occasion by organising a surprise party. She invited my close friends and some relatives, pulling it all together through social media connections. The highlight of the celebration was my grandmother's announcement of her gift to me, the penthouse apartment. She explained that her lawyer would manage the property until I turned 18, at which point it would be fully mine. This news was a beacon of hope amidst the emotional storms of the past year. However, the news of this generous gift somehow reached my mother, leading to an unexpected and unwelcome proposition. She and William suggested that he adopt me, on the condition that I persuade my grandmother to transfer the penthouse ownership to him. This proposal, far from being welcome, felt like a betrayal. I flatly refused and told my mother there was no need for further communication. She tried to reach out again, but I ignored her calls and texts. Later, she texted me to explain her situation, mentioning the financial and emotional support William had provided after my father's departure. She detailed the challenges she faced with the minimal financial support from my father, contrasting sharply with our previous lifestyle. Despite her attempts to justify her actions, the message only deepened the rift between us, as I struggled to reconcile her pursuit of happiness with the impact it had on our family. Her reliance on William's support, while understandable, could not bridge the gap her decisions had created in our relationship. He explained that William had stepped in during a tough time, acknowledging that William hadn't been very warm towards me. My mum attributed his distant behaviour to his past relationships, where issues with children had caused significant problems, leading to breakups. She believed that considering William's past experiences and traumas was important too. She reassured me that leaving me in my grandmother's care wasn't abandonment, since she knew I would be well looked after. It was just her way of trying to secure her own happiness, while ensuring I wasn't alone. Now, with a new arrangement supposedly allowing me to join them, she was eager for me to accept the offer and meet William's expectations, so we could all be together again. She mentioned that my brother missed me a lot, hinting that my return could mend things. Her message, filled with expectations that I align my actions with William's wishes just as she had, really unsettled me. It felt like she was asking me to compromise my integrity to accommodate her new life. Despite the soft tone she tried to use, the underlying manipulation left a sour taste in my mouth. I took some time to respond, and when I did, I made it clear that I would not follow our William's demands. I told her to proceed with her original plan of moving without me. The conversation with my grandmother confirmed my stance. She vehemently refused to transfer the penthouse property to William, distrustful of his intentions and protective of our family's asset. The next morning, my mum unexpectedly showed up at my grandmother's place. I was at school at the time, but my grandmother briefed me as soon as I got home. My mum had come to discuss the property transfer proposition, which I had already decisively refused. I reiterated my decision, confused why she hadn't understood my initial rejection. In our conversation, I was direct and possibly harsh, but given the circumstances, my frustration was justified. She broke down, claiming her attempts were all in pursuit of making everyone happy, but I countered that it seemed she was really just trying to please herself, expecting everyone else to conform to her desires. I stood my ground, expressing that I had my own life to consider and wouldn't jeopardize it to appease her. She left abruptly, and later I discovered she had blocked me. This action made me reflect on our exchange, and though I felt somewhat guilty for my blunt words, the situation revealed deep-seated issues that were perhaps long overdue to be addressed. I hadn't fully appreciated the timing and depth of my mother's relationship with William, possibly predating even the divorce, and what that might mean for all of us involved. Since the divorce was finalised, it's become apparent that things were more complicated than I originally thought. I had never considered the possibility of my mother being unfaithful, as it was just too out of character for her. However, recent discussions and speculations have made me question everything, even though I'm not sure I want to dive into those suspicions. It's been especially tough because the split means I can no longer talk to my little brother as I used to, and I miss him terribly. We've always been close, and now unsettling theories about his paternity are floating around, which only adds to the confusion and hurt. These past few days, my grandmother and I have tried to make sense of all this, but it's only led to more questions and a shifting view of my mother. I've considered talking to my father for more clarity, although I'm not even sure he'd be open to discussing these sensitive topics. It's now been 4 days since my mother's last attempt to contact us, and she's even gone as far as to block both me and my grandmother. Despite everything, my grandmother has been my rock, supporting me out of love without any financial expectation from my mother. Her selflessness in her retirement years is something I deeply appreciate, though it seems lost on my mother. My father visited. My grandmother had reached out to him, but kept it from me to manage my expectations. His arrival was a surprise, and it was even more shocking when he embraced me and apologised for everything. He sat us down and opened up about the deterioration of his marriage with my mother, which began long before they officially ended things. He admitted to an affair with a co-worker 4 years ago, which was eventually discovered by my mother about a year ago. This revelation led to their divorce, where my mother demanded silence about the affair in exchange for the house, full custody, and a generous financial settlement. My father agreed, desperate to keep his actions secret to avoid losing my respect. He apologised for his past mistakes, particularly for being overly focused on work and not being there for me. This conversation shed new light on the family dynamics and the pressures and decisions that were made, often at the cost of our family's unity. Now, with these revelations out in the open, I'm left to process this new information and what it means for my relationship with both of my parents. In his own defence, my dad explained that the pressure to maintain the upscale lifestyle my mother desired drove him to work relentlessly. He made it clear that, while he wasn't justifying his actions, he wanted me to understand that it wasn't entirely his fault. He also revealed the immediate reason for breaking his promise and visiting me without my mum's consent. My grandmother had left him a message mentioning William by name, wanting to know if my dad was familiar with him. Concerned, my dad rushed over because not only did he know William, but he also had reservations about his character stemming from their shared college days. Back in college, my parents were together, but William had always harboured feelings for my mum. At a gathering the night before their graduation, William had drunkenly confessed his feelings to her. Though she rejected him since she was with my dad, she kept this encounter from my dad for 3 weeks, only to later confess she was confused about her feelings. This led them to take a 5-month break, during which my mum briefly dated William. The relationship fizzled, and she returned to my dad. When they reconciled, my dad asked her to cut off contact with William due to his discomfort, a request she initially agreed to but later ignored, which caused significant strife and nearly ended their relationship. My dad recounted that after a particularly intense argument, William showed up at his apartment and they ended up in a physical altercation. William thought it would impress my mum, but it backfired, pushing her to finally sever ties with him. According to my dad, after college, William left town and wasn't heard from for years. However, my dad suspected that my mum had reconnected with William after he heard rumours of him being back in the city. My dad wasn't sure when exactly my mum started speaking to William again, but their current engagement suggested a deeper involvement that might imply she was unfaithful during their marriage. This threw into question all the conditions she set during their divorce. My dad expressed his intention to confront her, but promised to wait until I had spoken to her to try and uncover the full story. With all of this information, I was caught in a whirlwind of emotions, unsure of whom to trust as both of my parents had let me down in various ways. I finally confronted my mum. Given that she had blocked me, I had no choice but to show up unannounced. She was taken aback but let me in, and thankfully, William wasn't home at the time. I started off by feigning an apology to lower her defences and allow for a more open conversation. I carefully broached the subject, expressing difficulty in accepting William so soon into our family as a pretext to delve deeper. I hinted at my doubts about the serendipitous timing of her meeting William right after her divorce, trying to nudge her toward revealing their past connections from college. However, she didn't immediately confess to anything, leaving me to press further for the truth. When I confronted my mum, she simply remarked on how lucky she was to have found William so quickly after the divorce, avoiding any admission of their prior acquaintance. My dad had already shown me photos of him with both my mum and William from their college days, confirming they all knew each other back then. Despite my initial doubts about the whole story, my mum's evasion and outright denial about knowing William before only solidified my trust in my dad's version of events. Things took a turn when my mum, perhaps realising her initial response was too vague, confessed that she had never planned to tell me about her past with William. She admitted that her rushed engagement and plans to move away were driven by a desire to erase every reminder of my father from her life. She then revealed his affair, the very secret she had used to leverage a favourable divorce settlement from him, despite promising him she'd never tell me. At that point, I felt there was no reason to continue the conversation. I left abruptly and called my dad to inform him he could proceed as he saw fit because I now knew the truth. While I recognise that my dad isn't entirely blameless in past events, my mum's actions had cast her in a far worse light. After confronting my mum, my dad insisted on a paternity test, which confirmed he is indeed my father's child. My dad is now seeking full custody, and since I'm 16, my preference for him to have custody is taken into account. However, I am still living with my grandmother. While my dad and I are trying to mend our relationship, there are many issues to resolve, and I feel most stable with my grandmother for now. My mother was furious when she realised my visit was aimed at uncovering her secrets. She unblocked me long enough to express her anger before blocking me again. We haven't spoken since. As for William, he left my mother as quickly as he had proposed, especially after learning my dad was challenging the financial arrangements of their divorce. It turned out there was no real job offer for William. His plan had been to use my mum's finances to support his uncle's grocery store. This deception was also his motive in trying to persuade me to transfer my inherited property to him. Meanwhile, my mother, instead of reflecting on her actions, chose to vent to her friends, who in turn gossiped about the situation. This is how my dad and eventually I came to know more details about the whole mess. Thankfully, my dad and I are committed to improving our relationship. He has promised to be more present and involved in my life. We hope that once he gains custody, or at least shared custody of my brother, we can work towards being a happier, if not entirely functional family,